Okay, we're in it now. I found the notes document. I found the record button. I've achieved all of my goals. Good morning and welcome to the koha-US Systems Administration and Reports Special Interest Group, where we talk about systems administration and reports and other things that we are specially interested in. As I say every meeting, I have no agenda here aside from, hey, do you guys want to talk about stuff? So what would y'all like to talk about? Anybody had any fun system preferences or admin problems or reports questions? Is anybody on 2305 and having strong feelings about it? That's how that sentence works. The floor is yours.
Well, I'm starting to dig into setting things up, so I have several questions. So I'll just spit them out.
Yeah, go for it.
First off, I don't need the details, but what is the mechanism you use if you needed to push out due dates?
Like to set
Like
them
a
further into
like a
the future.
library is going to be closed for a month, and so you want to push the due dates out.
And these are for things that are already checked out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
There is a tool for that in the tools module under circulation
Okay,
called something like batch extend due dates.
there's a tools module. I didn't realize that. Okay, so that's one down.
And also
Yeah.
another thing, if it's like a temporary closing like that, you can use the calendar too, right?
The calendar won't change due dates for things that are already checked out.
Okay, yeah.
The batch extend due dates tool, just be aware, it's a very powerful tool that was developed like March of 2020 when suddenly due dates needed to change really
Right.
fast. It will let you jank stuff up pretty bad.
Okay.
Just, be careful.
Yeah. Well, currently I'm using a tool I wrote for our current ILS. So in our current ILS, we are able for schools to set that there's a final due date for the school year, so that say if it's 2 weeks before school's going to be out, but things check out for 3 weeks, it'll automatically give it a 2-week due date. I haven't seen such a mechanism in Koha. Is there?
There is a thing for that. Koha calls that a hard due date. And
Oh, is that what that meant?
Yep. And
okay.
And you can, yeah. So you say like everything is due, hard due date of end of the
Got it.
semester. And if the regular checkout period would push past that, it cuts it off.
Got it. Awesome.
That becomes a thing that you need to be on top of changing every semester
Oh
because
yeah.
there's no mechanism.
Oh yeah.
There's a, yeah.
I get bit by that almost every year. Okay, if you have, let's say you have a user profile that's a temporary profile for this one library. So you want patrons to be able to place holds and check out items if they have that temporary card for that library, but you don't want them to be able to walk into any other library and check out things or place holds. So what I was thinking is that I put in a circ map rule that says that's specifically for the library, and then I put a rule in that says for all libraries, and I say none of that is allowed. Does that logic work the way I think it's going to?
That sounds right. I'm going to defer to people with more complicated circ rules than me. But
that
yeah,
sounds like what we're trying to do, what we call local use only patrons.
Right, yeah.
And right now it's because if you look at like the hold policy section of a library's circ rules at the bottom, you can't link a particular patron with the item type and the what you want the hold to do. And if that was the case, then yes, you could do it. Because basically we want to have like a local use only, like Barrington local use only, and in the circ rules at the bottom, and then in the hold policy at the bottom, Barrington patron local use only from this library only is holdable, but you can only pick up at the home library. And you can't, there's no association with the patron at that point, or patron type at that point.
Okay, but what I threw out with that idea work of having two lines in your circ map in which one is specific to the library with that
Mhm.
particular profile, and it says you can check things out and you can place holds, and then you have a second rule that says for all libraries with that particular profile you can't check out and you can't place holds. Like it's a little awkward for me because in the current ILS I have, you can test your rules. You put in the values and it tells you which line it's going to use. So I can check these things out, but Koha doesn't seem to have that. So I'm just guessing.
So do you say in like when you say in a rule for all libraries, you mean like the default for all libraries
Right. The
page?
default for all libraries with that particular user category would be don't allow holds or checkouts.
I don't think it would ever get there. That's what we've been noticing.
Okay.
Because if you have like, unless you're specifying a patron type in your libraries, is that what you're doing? You're
Yeah.
Okay.
Specifying the patron category.
Our consortium has libraries that we loan to each other, but we don't loan. I missed the first half of what your question was, but they can't come to our library and check items out.
That's
So we
exactly what I want.
we have an all rule that says that all category types can't check out. And then each individual library has rules for their categories saying all of Rapid City's libraries, they can check out, place holds, blah, blah, blah. And then we also added some rules for Sturgis's because they can come to our library and check out. So we have over 500 rules because we have to have them for all of our libraries and the 4 other libraries that can come here. But then we do have some higher level ones that don't allow checkouts. And that means when they come here, they can't check out. But if they go to Sturgis or Whitewood or whatever, they can go and check out at their library. Now, some of those smaller libraries, they don't have all of those rules because the people don't go there to check out anyway. So they just rely on the staff to know, hey, you can't check out to Rapid City patrons. And we also added some jQuery that makes it when you scan another library's card, it turns their information over on the left side red. So you can see, hey, this isn't one of my patrons, which is also helpful.
Okay. And you did do that by saying there was a rule that says all libraries cannot check out, but this one specific library can check out.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
by patron category. All patron categories can't check out, but then my library has the rules saying my patrons can, and their libraries have rules saying my patrons can.
Oh, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let's see. Next on the list. What if you want items to only check out with an override? I didn't see any way to specify that. We have that feature in our current ILS.
You can mark them as not for loan, and then you can have a rule that your staff is allowed to override that, and then they can check it out.
Okay.
I think I think maybe we have to take the not for loan status back off and then they can check out. But there are ways for staff to override things. You just have to set your rules. I would probably have to see exactly, get in there and play with it to.
Right. Okay, but I understand what you're saying.
Chanel,
that makes sense. Yeah.
This is Sally from Knox County, who's about a year ahead of you on this Symphony to Koha migration. Overrides in Koha and overrides in Symphony are kind of different, and we ended up what we found is, for example, if our book drops and our circulation desks aren't anywhere near each other, and sometimes someone will come in and they'll drop everything in the book drop and then come to the circulation desk to check out a pile of stuff, and they'll be over the limit. And with Symphony, you had to type in a password basically to do the override. With Koha, it just says, hey, are you sure you want to do this? And it's a button that you hit.
Okay.
And those are fine when it's that checkout limit override, but when it's a checkout, for example, DVDs, we don't allow young children to check out adult DVDs. It will if you hit that override button, it allows the checkout, but because the rule is basically no checkout 000 for the loan period and all that, it gives it a due date at the end of the day. So what we found right off the hop was a whole lot of these, I don't understand why this person has a due date at the end of the day for this DVD. I said, well, because they're 6. Why did you check it out to them? And what we ended up doing was finding an open source GIF of a big red stop sign with a hand blinking. And that kind of stopped people in their tracks. Instead of just a message that they just breezed right through.
Right.
They kind of had to, it was hard to miss the big red blinky hand. And that seemed to slow it down and caught that you really do need to read the screen here and pay attention to what it's telling you.
Good idea.
Now, Sally, I think if you made a rule that said children borrower type can check out 0 DVDs, but with a due date of, a week in the future, I think that override would then find that rule and give a correct due date. Not that you want those checkouts to happen
Exactly.
anyway.
I think it was more just the shift from Symphony overrides where it was kind of like a speed bump. It's like slowed them down, but you still got, they didn't offer an override for, I think we didn't have, overrides were very specific, whereas overrides in Koha are like, it's just one general big override. Do you allow staff to override things or not? It's yes or no, as opposed to, I'm going to allow someone with this code to override this transaction. And Symphony had much more granular permissions on overrides.
Yeah, and that's a good thing to be
Koha
aware of,
doesn't.
Chanel.
Okay.
I'm gonna, if I could find the chat, I've misplaced my chat. I have a bug. Bug 27057. This one has been around for a while and it is not particularly moving anywhere, but it's a bug asking for the ability to, when you're doing overrides at checkout, to be able to say, yes, override once and have Koha remember that for that whole checkout to that patron.
Oh, that'd be handy.
Wouldn't it? Because when you do have that patron who returned 10 DVDs and wants to check out 10 more DVDs, it stinks to have to say yes 10 times.
I would just like to be able to hit a shortcut key, which there is, like you can do Alt something and it'll say yes, but I can never remember what the shortcut key is.
Well, and those are, I always forget what they're called. They're like action keys or something, and they're different in different browsers and different operating systems. And yeah.
Well, that's all the questions that I had for now.
Chanel, just like sidebar, you probably have already tackled this question, but since this being the systems administration seg as well, these are the system preferences that are going to massively change all the stuff you're talking about and how they work. So I'm sort of waving at them for the group. If you haven't ever thought about circ control and Homer holding branch, and
we are thinking about it a whole lot right now.
they really, these are the system preferences that ask like reserves control branch. When you say patrons from, or this library allows holds for these patrons. What do you mean when you ask this library? Is it the patrons library or the items library? And your hold rules work hugely differently based on what you pick. I haven't read through all the documentation about these system preferences in the past 6 months, so I don't feel like prepared to go into them in huge detail. But if you're ever like really baffled about what your hold rules are doing, that's a terrifying place to start.
Yeah, what we've discovered is that the public libraries want to use the circ rule for the circ library for the circ rule. The school libraries want to use the home library or the items home library for the circ rule. So I think what we're going to do is, as a default, use the circ library as the circ rule, and then for all school libraries, make a unique item type for their stuff so that we can then set those short 1 and 2 week rules that they have, and that way no matter where the books go, they'll check out. Of course, the public library patrons are going to have an awakening when suddenly they usually check out things for 3 weeks and they can only check it out for 1 week.
Fun times. Well, what's everybody else up to? How's Koha? Is anybody else an early adopter? Well, Brendan unmuted himself. Oh, exciting.
I was just gonna bring up some reporting that I was trying to figure out for reporting on payments. So there is the cash register statistics report. We were using that, I guess. Some of our libraries were using that at least. But then the question was, we're trying to basically get data to, we have about 5 or 6 libraries still that charge fines. So we wanted to be able to like look at those get a report of payments collected from fines and differentiate that from payments collected for like replacement costs or other payments. And I think that my understanding of it at least is that there's a credit type authorized value, and then you could add credit types. So you could add a credit type for replacement cost, and then when you're taking the payment, you choose like, this is a payment for replacement cost, something like that. But our system just has like the default credit types for like if you waive the charge, or if the item is returned or something like that. So I was trying to figure out what other, like, we don't have a way that they're indicating that this payment is for a replacement charge. So how can we like take those out of, how can we basically exclude those in the where clause when we're querying the account lines table? If anybody has any, I came up with an idea to basically be like, well, if you put in you can put in any value, like let's say $10 or $5, and then only aggregate payments that were less than $5 or something, then you can kind of make it up that like, well, if the payments are larger than $5, they're for other stuff rather than overdue fines. But it's not exactly perfect.
So I think all the data you need exists already. You don't need to set anything else up. And if I understand correctly, what you're looking for is not a specific credit ID or credit type, because the credit type is what would get applied to the payment.
Yeah.
But you instead want the debit type of, in this case, lost, because you're looking for payments on charges for lost items.
Yeah.
So when something gets lost,
we were looking for, but we want to exclude those. We basically want to count payments that were payments for overdue charges, but not payments for anything else.
Sure. And your overdue charges will have a distinct debit type.
I can find like the overdue charges,
Mhm.
and I can find payments, but I wasn't quite able to figure out how you can connect those things together.
Oh, through the accursed accounts offset table, which is the table that says this line in account lines that is a debit connects to this line in account lines that's a credit. So you could say this was a payment on this. So you could say, find me the payments where the associated debit by way of account offsets has account type overdue or lost or whatever.
Okay, so I'll have to play with that. I didn't, okay, so I can, you join to the account offsets with the account lines ID based on it being a credit or a debit ID, because it's like one to many.
Yeah, here, let me show you a thing. Let me like share my screen, and because it's weird table structure. Hey, look, tab autocomplete in reports, because we're an early adopter and it's pretty nice. It's got some bugs. Okay. So we're going to say select all from account offset. So just give me like 20 of them. So account offsets, every line here has an account offsets ID that you don't really need to do anything with. That's the primary key for this table. But if this offset is associated with a credit, that's the account lines ID for the credit associated with this $2.50.
Okay.
And this is the account lines number ID for the debit for this $2.50. If I say 175 and 176. So those two associated lines, 175, the debit is some copier fees. And then that 176 is the payment on a credit card of the 250. So we can
Okay.
say this payment is for debit type code copier fees. And then, yeah, it does get more complicated. If your payment went to several things, you need to subdivide that out. If this payment had been for multiple things, there would be then multiple lines in account offsets that had that same payment, that same credit number tying to different debits. And you would need to use the account lines amount to figure out of that payment how much went to each debit.
Okay.
This stuff
I think
hurts.
I think I can work on that, make it better. But hopefully the data that we got them is going to be like a close enough kind of thing. But I don't know if it would be nice to have like the more precise numbers for that. So I'll have to play with that.
I've got an example report
so
I can send you
Yeah,
to start from.
that would be cool. Because I thought that maybe it's like we didn't set up the credit types, but my understanding of the credit types, they can choose some default credit types that are already included in the system without going into that place and adding any new ones. So there's already credit types for like it's you just waiving the charge, canceling the charge. I forget the other ones were, but there was a like my thought was maybe you could just add another one so that like anytime you're taking payment for an actual replacement charge, it's just like very obvious and easy to account for it then. But it doesn't work if the payment can include multiple different, you can pay one payment for many different things that the library's charged you for. So I guess that's the.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of libraries setting up unique credit types.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of examples where people have. I've seen a lot of debit types because every library has like, you know, book sale or buy a pair of headphones or whatever. But credit types, I don't see a lot of custom setup for.
Okay, that's good to know.
I'm going to second Mike's sentiment of math is hard. Let's go shopping. Well, what else, y'all?
I have a question since you're an early adopter. My
Yeah.
test server is an early adopter. Is your holds ratio report broken? Like
Oh, I haven't looked.
It seems like the data table is broken on mine, but I can't tell if it's my fault or not.
Looks okay.
You're talking about the built-in holds ratio report?
Yeah.
This one
Yeah,
that
see,
lives here
mine is off.
Oh, huh. Like the columns don't line up properly?
Something. I can show you if you want to see. I think it's just I must have some custom code in there that's breaking it.
Do you have any columns hidden with column configuration?
Here, I can share my screen. Oh gosh, this one. So see, it's got like the data
Oh,
table
weird.
isn't
Yeah.
loading correctly. It doesn't look like it. Yeah, and when I disable the jQuery with my fun little button, it still doesn't fix it. So I guess I need to figure out CSS fix it. It's a CSS problem. I have identified where to look.
Well, that's fun and interesting because I wouldn't have thought CSS could break it in that fashion.
Yeah, I don't know.
That looked more like a jQuery problem. Shows what I know.
Okay, well, thanks. It's not a bug. That's what I need to know.
Superb. I don't feel like I've done anything else really super exciting in 2305 stuff. I changed our holds queue with the mysterious holds queue system preference that we talked about last month. It changes the default match that the queue aims for.
What's the name of that system preference? Do you remember?
I'm grabbing it here. Scroll. Oh, I don't know. Here we go. Holds queue prioritize branch. I will put the bug in chat. Share my screen again. Here's one. Holds queue prioritize branch.
I don't think you're showing the right window.
Oh,
We're seeing Slack.
well, enjoy the Slack. Let me share the right screen. Thank you. Not that the system preference is a ton to look at. So this is in the code for the holds queue when it is picking targets, when it's deciding which item should fill a hold. By default, it will prioritize an item whose home library matches the item's pickup library, on the assumption that this is a book that has wandered away from home, and using it to fill this hold is going to encourage it to go home. This bug is good for a library like me, where we float everything. Home library is meaningless on our items. Everything just sort of sits where it sits. So we don't want to prioritize sending everything back to the main branch because every single item we own says Asbury as its home library, and it doesn't make sense to sort of passively shove everything back this way. So we've set it to instead try to fill holds with items that are already at the pickup branch and minimize transfers. It has not seemed to make a huge difference. It's not like we're filling hundreds of holds a day anyway.
So this is new because I feel
new.
like our stuff is already doing that.
Well, and it's weird because this is one of several points of logic in the holds queue. Like, it checks that first, and if there is not an item where the item's home branch matches the pickup library, then it goes on to like your transport cost matrix and all your other holds queue preferences and does some picking from there. And I am super prepared to believe that I have misunderstood this entire logic in the first place. And this is, one small aspect of the holds queue decision.
So
As I'm reading the bug, it sounds to me like it's really only going to help if the holds transportation cost matrix is running. That looks to me like what it's prioritized, what it's the step in the logic where it's filling in is going to fill in there. So
what's the difference between this new one and the local holds priority setting?
Oh
Where it
man, I don't
says
even.
like, because we have as our set to give priority for filling holds to patron whose pickup library matches the item's home library.
So the holds queue prioritize branch is about which item gets picked to fill a hold for whoever's first in line, whatever patron is first in line. Local holds priority is the inverse of that. It's about deciding which patron out of the priority list gets the item that you've just checked in. Local holds priority will skip some patrons down the list to someone
Okay.
who is picking the book up at the place where the book is now. So it's, yeah. You can juice the whole process from either direction. Make it as complicated as possible.
So we will want to keep, let me see, because I have our test servers on the 2305 now, so I just started poking around last night. All right, thank you.
Sure.
looking at the bug queue on this, it looks to me like one of the issues that it's going to have is if the patron's home library and the pickup library don't match. Like if the patron's home library is branch A, but they want to pick it up at branch B, since this is working on the patron's home library and the item's current location, current holding library, if the pickup location is different, it seems to me that that's going to be an issue too. And there's a comment on that in the bug too. So it's an interesting look. It's an interesting looking feature that we'll never use because we don't work that way at all.
Yeah.
I'm just worried about it interfering with what we already have established. I mean, like
it would totally interfere with what you already have established.
Because it's not an on-off, it's a home library, holding library choice. So
yeah.
I need to start testing that, I guess.
Sorry, I interrupted you, Barbara.
That's okay. I have a question which is about reports, but it's not just Koha reports. So for years, we've done our monthly reports and our state library report by gathering information in Excel spreadsheets that are connected to each other. And the person that did those is no longer here. And so we're looking at, should we learn how to do that? Or should we move to something else? And so not only do we want to get, numbers on checkouts and holds and all those things, but we were recording, like how many reference transactions and how many programs and how many people attended those programs. And then there was a narrative section. So we could say, well, staff learned to do this month. And then it compared statistics for this month of this year to the same month last year to see how things were changing over time. So what are people using to do maybe not just Koha reporting, but all kinds of reporting you might want to do, because this is given to our library board and then we use statistics that we've collected to fill out our yearly state report.
You might look
Right.
at Library IQ. We don't use it, but I did have a demo from them, and that's essentially what it does. Is it directly connects to your ILS so that it can pull all the statistics directly from there, but then you can also set up buckets from like reference questions and all that and put in your own statistics, and then it graphs all that stuff out and a number of things it shows like year over year, and you can do comparisons.
Okay, I'll check it out.
And it also has other handy stuff like you can analyze your collection for diversity, quality, and a bunch of things like that. I think I may even help you fill in series. I can't remember or not.
Thanks.
Barbara, we're not
before
doing
we
anything.
migrate,
Go ahead, Brittany.
sorry. Before we migrated to Koha, we used to use Google Data Studio. It's called Looker Studio now. But you can basically, if you put the data in a Google spreadsheet or another database, then you can do all sorts of reports on that, and like time series data and different things like that. So it was pretty good. One of the problems with migration, we haven't been able to keep it up, unfortunately, because like the way that I think the problem with any kind of thing that you're using externally for this kind of reporting is going to be like maintaining that it's like you're always extracting the data on a regular basis, and you are checking that those extractions are going well in case, so you don't like lose data randomly, and then you have like gaps in your data. So that was like always a challenge when I had that set up. But we had like basically scheduled SQL queries that dumped data in Google Sheets, and then we had the Data Studio like front end. The users could like filter different columns and change the date range that they're looking at and stuff, and it worked. They really liked it, so we want to be able to do that again maybe, but it's figuring out how to have those scheduled extracts working in a way that's maintainable. It's kind of a tricky thing. So for our like official state reporting, we're using Koha reports just so that it's entirely coming out of the ILS, and we're not messing with any external thing, just to kind of make it seems like it's more reliable and less like somebody can blame you for screwing up the data that you're extracting.
Yeah.
But
yeah, we're mostly using Koha reports to get the data. And of course, we're just one location, so that makes our, it less complicated simply because we're one location. But we would use the reports and then, dump those numbers into these Excel spreadsheets. And then there were calculations made on the numbers that went into the sheets, that kind of stuff. So I just wasn't sure what others might be using for overall Koha plus other stuff, monthly reporting.
Barbara, have you looked at Metabase at all? I know McKinney's been doing interesting things with that, but I don't know how much it would be able to do what you're describing.
I need to look at it again. I know I was impressed when they did the presentation at the Koha Con in 20, whatever it was, in Kansas. And so I do need to look at that again and see what its capabilities are.
The thing I put in chat is their public facing statistics page that's just linked off of their Aspen catalog. That looks like it's all Koha stats, but I think Metabase is able to link up to other stuff and give you sort of a unified one-stop data hub. I know the one thing I asked Bywater about was if Metabase had any ability to get data from Overdrive, and apparently Overdrive doesn't make that available, which is too bad.
Good to know.
Well, we have access to Metabase, and I played around with it a bit, but I feel like it's just kind of hard to change like the tool that you're used to using, and then like you're gonna decide and commit to using this other brand new tool. It's like a big thing to change, but we have been looking at it. I guess what one of my frustrations is that I can't get the SQL access to do what I did previously with Sierra. It required like connecting to the database with the database credentials in a Python script and just pulling the data and putting it where the Google Data Studio report can access it. So like using Koha reports, I guess it's possible to make them basically public, and then have them scheduled to run. So you have to make the report public and schedule it to run, but the public reports, you're not allowed to use URL query parameters. So it's just like trying to build a system when you have to keep in count like all of these other limitations, when previously I built the system in a very like more flexible way. Is kind of the challenge that we're facing too. But Metabase is connected to the Koha database, so you're kind of like skipping that complication of it. But then you have to learn the Metabase specific kind of syntax. It's kind of, they have like a sort of similar to how you can put in runtime parameters in Koha reports, but it just has a different syntax. It's definitely a challenge.
When we migrated, I asked for access to the database, read-only, obviously. I'm not going to try to write back to it. And Bywater provided us with the credentials and the strings. And so we've been experimenting with different products. We have put Metabase on a server internally. I said, was this what we want to use? And I said, well, it's interesting. It does some stuff. Let's try Grafana. So now we're looking at Grafana, and we're just kind of working through, but because we have that direct connection, we're not playing around with exporting the data. We're just talk to Koha and get it. And we're seeing what other databases and systems we could, like PC reservation and our printing system, and trying to pull in that other sources of data without having to build our own data store somewhere. We can just talk to the live data.
And that's like another concern, I guess, is like if Bywater's policy now is to not give customers that kind of access to their system, and they're going to be like potentially moving to get rid of that access for all of their customers eventually, then you're going to be like, I wish I never said all that. I don't know.
We put that in our RFPs, and I want direct access to the database. So I don't know, year-to-year contracts, I'm not sure what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, just I think because long-term picture is they probably want to limit their kind of liability in terms of when they're applying for cyber insurance, like what are they giving access to their customers. So they're probably long-term is to not want to give out that access if they can avoid it.
Well,
they've definitely totally told us that they're not going to give it to us anymore. Even though we did ask for that, like during, I guess it wasn't like in writing in the RFP. That's where we kind of, but I know that they've given it to other people who have migrated after us, but they haven't given it to us. Just to let you guys know.
Something to watch out for. Thank you.
George, were you going to say something? I thought I heard him earlier.
Yeah, but I got a phone call right now, so sorry.
Thank you, everybody. Is
there anything else 2005 that people are just like dying to know about or look at or poke at?
I'm looking for all the toolkit. Oh God, you can't say I can't say that. Toolkit template stuff for like the hold pickup emails. Because I saw that they use by default toolkit template in that new notice type, but there are still some fields that I would expect to have in there, like the pickup by date, which is probably just expiration date, but I just don't know all the little things.
Yeah. Yeah. I put a big old
I s-
Google Doc in Slack the other day.
I saw that.
That was my attempt to begin to learn anything about how that works.
But I'm not really sure. Like you said something. You pointed out something about like a data dump or something. I just don't know how to use that. How do you?
And that was here. Let me share my screen again. Get the screen I want. Okay, so I was playing around in our overdue slip, just because this is the easiest notice to test. This is one folks don't tend to remember exists, but if you are in a patron record, pardon me, and if they have overdue things, you will see overdue slip in this little drop down. So it's an easy one to just like spam create over and over again.
Yep.
And that thing I said about dumper, like I really just put it here. I put that use dumper, like this here. I have that document here somewhere.
Yep.
So if I take that use dumper, dump overdues, and just put that here, the content of my notice will just be basically
Every
like a,
possible field in that.
yeah, it's like a JSON dump of the issues table. It'll tell you like due date, item number, patron number, which isn't anything you ever actually want to put in a notice, but I found it helpful to sort of just see what is the data that lives here and what is it all called.
Yeah. But is it, and I'll know like how to put together the like the brackets and all that.
Here, let me give my cat an overdue book.
Oh, you use your cat too as a test record?
Yeah. So that turned my notice into this big pile of gibberish. Right, because I want to. If I add that unblessed on there. That gives me. So this is 3 overdue books. Each one of these is 1 overdue book. I could find the closing bracket. So if I wanted to make my notice include, I don't know, this item number, I would say overdue dot item number, because item number is what that bit of information is called.
Okay. All right, so basically everything in the single quotes there, those are the fields to reference in the, okay.
Yeah, and really they're the same names as the fields in the issues table.
Right, it's just a different object isolated to overdues. Yep.
Yeah, and that's the part that has been most consistently confusing to me is this bit that's on the wiki where you need to remember, for some reason in template toolkit, we say item rather than items plural. We say biblio rather than biblios plural. And I guess I'll get used to it.
And then along the same lines, because yesterday I was playing with, like, I just kind of want to redesign our email do slip,
Sure.
and I couldn't find anything in the wikis for toolkit template for the checkout notice type, because those are just I don't know how to loop through that, because it's not like an issues slip. It's what was just checked out, within
Sure.
between the last time the email thing ran.
That I'm not sure how. So you mean like in your quick slip that prints out just the things you checked out just now, not?
It's actually not the quick slip, it's the checkout notice type. So
Oh yeah.
it's the email do slip, basically.
Do you mean the one that sends on the day things are due, or the one that sends on the day you check things out?
On the day you check things out.
I don't know if that one does template toolkit yet. Does it? Well, it says it does on the wiki. I would expect that to work the same way the example I put in that document for the overdue worked.
But I'm just using checkout instead of
Yeah.
overdue.
So you go into that notice with an object that is checkouts, and then you can use a for each in template toolkit. You can say for each checkout in checkouts to then split that out. And then you would say for each thing, you want checkout.item.biblio.title, I think, to get the title of the bib associated with the item associated with the checkout.
Gotcha.
But I feel like I need to put 1,000 asterisks on that of, boy, I think that's how it works.
Right. Yeah. And here's like another shoot for the sky question for like email for these notices. Is there a way to basically render it differently if they're looking at the notice on a mobile device? Because basically what I want to try to do on the checkout, the email do slip, and I have like a kind of like a table, and like with the columns title, author, call number, barcode, due date. It looks horrible on mobile. It looks fine like in a desktop, but then it's all squished and all over the place, and things don't line up nice. And I prefer, like, for a mobile device, I just have a block of like, okay, title, author, call number, due date, next item, same thing, instead of a table.
This is a question for someone who knows more about web design than I do, but it seems
okay.
theoretically possible.
Yeah, couldn't you do like media?
And I'm not a
queries in
web
your
designer. I'm
loops or
basically
something?
looking through. I'm like looking at all the other things, trying to copy things from one notices that like Lucas had done for us, and then pasting it into this other notice.
I mean, if you're defining your whole notice in HTML, then the HTML in your notice could check the format on which the page is being viewed and give different content based on that, I guess. I'm glad George unmuted himself and turned his camera on. This seems like a very George question.
I'm actually coughing. I'm not trying to get everybody's attention. I unmuted myself and then I started to cough. Sorry. Anything you can do on a web page, you can do in a notice, because that's all it is. That's all I mean, if you click the little checkbox that says HTML, then you can put whatever kind of crazy HTML in there you want. The trick is that you have to learn the HTML in order to do that. What you want to do there sounds to me like you want to put them in a table kind of configuration where you've just got a single table row, where you're just using a single cell wide table, and then put all that content in there and then have the table be responsive, which is all doable in HTML if you know how to do that in HTML.
Yep.
One of the tricks that I do on all of our, we have, we use portable Firefox for our libraries and set it up and to log into Koha, and then we turn on silent printing for portable Firefox for their checkout stations, so that when they check things out, and then they hit print, they don't have to go through all those dialog boxes. They just hit print, it pops right out without going through all those dialog boxes. But then
our libraries would love that.
But then but what happens is that we want it to print on that receipt size paper. And so like all of our slips that we print are set up so that they've got the HTML commands to say that this page is only, 3.5 inches wide. And so that's part of the CSS in those pages, is if it's going to print as a slip, it's only going to be this wide. And then that way, when somebody needs to change from 12, a regular size printer to a receipt printer, you don't have that issue where all of a sudden all your receipts are printing thinking that it's a wide piece of paper. There's anything you can do in a web page, you can do on anything that Koha is going to print through the notices and slips tools. It's the trick is you've got to learn enough HTML to know how to do that.
Yeah, just wasn't sure if anyone else has done something similar. Or
I've got something similar, and there is somewhere on the wiki, and I'm looking for it, there is a notices and slips library that's not very complete. And so that's one of my goals for this next year, is to work on adding more content there with some better examples. And there are some good, that's actually one of the best places to go to learn how to use Template Toolkit, is to go there and see what the other existing Template Toolkit notices are. And I put a link in the chat box there.
Yeah, I've definitely gotten some things out of this for our other slips.
Yeah. See, the biggest issue that everybody seems to have with Template Toolkit is that the old Hungry Alligator syntax uses the database name straight from Koha. It's the same fields that you would use when writing a report. But Template Toolkit uses the same, it gets most of the same data, but it's using the Perl, what is it? I forget the name of it. Is it CPAN or whatever? It's, it's using this different syntax. And what happened with Koha is the developers used different language when they created that. It would have been so easy at the very beginning to use the same words and vocabulary in Perl to call those items, items, which would make it match what's in the database. But somebody said, we'll just call it item. And then we're stuck with that until somebody completely rewrites Koha, which isn't going to happen anytime soon. So that's the big issue, is that the Template Toolkit uses developer speak, and the old Hungry Alligator syntax uses uses SQL speak. And so that's, I think, where everybody gets tripped up, because a lot of us library users know SQL speak, but none of us, hardly any of us, know developer speak. And those of us that do know developer speak start writing things for Koha, and then they get hired at companies and they become developers. Or at least that's my experience, is the ones that are really good at it end up stop being librarians and they move on someplace else and become developers.
Thank you,
I
George.
just want to mention that I've been playing with this, and I just realized, so like I have a slip. I'm gonna share my screen really fast. Sorry, I know we're like at time. This one. So I have a slip that I jazzed up with a table, some styling. When you use it within Koha, looks great. But when it came in the email, a lot of those styles got stripped. So I think it's because of those styles are in like a style block at the end rather than like inline. I think it's keeping the inline styles, but it's stripping the style tag that I put in there. So that's just a heads up if you're playing with it.
And there is a place, there's a system preference that lets you point to an external style sheet where you can create all your styles. If you're really going to be thorough and create like a whole CSS style for all of your notices or all of your receipts, because there's a separate one for slips and there's a separate one for notices. But you can create a whole style sheet, and then you just have to remember what your style sheet tells you to do. I find it a lot easier a lot of times just to put a style tag in the notice, probably like what Jason's doing. So
There are some things that are like a little bit limiting about the HTML that can render in emails versus like on a regular web page. So I don't know if there's a good resource to like look up if you can compare, or I don't know, run your HTML through something that would tell you any flags about email clients not liking certain things in HTML.
one of my tricks for working with creating new notices and that is there's one slip or notice type, I forget what it is. It's like overdue. I'm looking it up here. Overdue slip is the code. Overdues in all caps. And it's one that prints when you have an overdue item, there's part of the drop down on a patron record that lets you print that instantly. And so that's one of the things I do is I do a lot of testing in that, because I can go in there, make a change, and then create a fake patron and give them an overdue item. And then I can go in there and just, make a change and then instantly see what the change looks like. Because that's one of the issues with koha. There isn't a good way to build a notice and see what it looks like immediately, unless you have access to the back end and you can go in there and
I create a separate, I copy one of the notices and just use like a separate library, like Ocean State Library.
Yeah.
It's not a real location. So then I feed it through that.
Yeah.
But it took me 4 tries yesterday for the item do slip email, because I'm like, well, is it the patron home library it's coming from? Is it the item's home library coming? Is it from where the item was checked out? Because I just kept getting the one we have for all the other libraries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think which one of those it comes from is based on a system preference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it ended up being the I can't remember. I think it was the checkout location. Oh no, the items home library.
Should anybody find themselves having a grand epiphany with a vision of what a message preview process would look like, it'd be great. I don't know what the answer is, but yeah, we need something in koha, some easy way to say, show me this notice.
Well, and even my trick with the overdue slip notice isn't perfect, because there's some fields in some notices that aren't available in overdue slip.
Yeah.
So,
well, and like yesterday I was playing with the pre-due digest and the due digest, because they've got new stuff in 2305,
right.
and they fetch data in an entirely different method than the overdue slip. So really the things you learn in the overdue slip are only somewhat applicable to the pre-due and due digest. Because of course.
It would go a long way if we just had like a button we could push. like
Yeah.
I created this in this test. Because right now if I need to test my overdue, I have to create an overdue. I have to wait for that process to run overnight and then fiddle with it the next day and not get distracted. And that never
When a lot of those, even if you have command line access, there's no great way to like run the advanced notice cron for just one patron, like test this for just one guy. It's, well, I don't know, send them to everybody and see how it goes.
At least for the overdue or the bill, we're using a plugin And that allows you to kind of see that's pretty nice experience actually, because you can just run the report and see your results pretty instantly. And we always have enough like items that are they're going to come up on that report, so I don't have to worry about like creating test items. But that would be, I don't know.
What plugin is that?
That plugin. It's called the Overdue and Bill Printer plugin or something. Let me get the link here. This is it. Yeah. This is the plugin that we use. So it allows you to just like see your overdue plugins pretty easily, actually. You just choose which template you're using. You fill out the form, and then it renders them.
So this is to generate overdue notices to print, like
Yeah,
physical
for
copy
printing.
ones? Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
And I don't really know exactly why we ended up with the plugin as doing it, but it was during the migration. A lot of stuff was happening. The overdues and the bills were not working the way that they were supposed to, and then
I think it had to do with who was sending the bill.
yeah, who was sending the
Oh,
bill was
sure.
messed up, or who was sending the overdue, because the bills
Yeah.
go out manually. But yeah, like what information was getting pulled into the template was
Mhm.
not the way that we wanted it. And they actually, Kyle did a little development on this plugin specifically to help our situation.
Well, it's something fun to play with for those who wish to print overdues. All right, we are at 11:08. We're past time. Last check, is anybody's library actively on fire? Does anybody have a library emergency we need to address? Okay. If you begin to die, please let us know. Otherwise, we'll see you in a month. Thank you all for coming. Go forth and koha well. And we'll see you in January.
Thank you.
Goodbye.